Good morning. Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today. Let's get started with a much condensed version of our planned Liverpool conference schedule. We ran one of our conferences in London last week, so all presentations from the day will be available over the next few days or so from the Cadcorp website. Before we begin, the session will be about 45 minutes and we'll be sending out the recording link by email afterwards, so there'll be no need to be writing lots of notes. Time permitting, we'll be having a Q&A session at the end. There's a question panel on the right where you can type and submit your questions at any time throughout the webinar, and we'll pick those up at the end. Also, we'd be very grateful at the end if you could complete our short survey, which will pop up. This will help us with future webinars. And finally, just to let you know that you are in listen-only mode, so we can't hear you. Just to introduce myself and my colleague today, my name is Demelza Potter and I work in the business development team here at Cadcorp, and I predominantly work with local and central government customers. My co-presenter is Ian Usher. Ian heads up our pre-sales team and he'll be delivering some live demos later on. Also worth mentioning that Ian will be taking over many of Jeremy's accounts for existing customers as of the 1st of April, but you'll receive formal notification of that in the next few weeks. So the agenda points that we'll be covering today, I'm going to start with a bit about Cadcorp, as I know some of you listening are new to Cadcorp. I'll then move on to my presentation, GIS professionals in government informing, providing answers and aiding decision making. I'll then pass to my colleague Ian, who's going to deliver 2 live demos for us, making GIS less task heavy and some GIS top tips for doing more with less. And then back to myself where I'll summarize and provide the Q&A session at the end. Okay, I mentioned we've had some new people to Cadcorp in the audience, so I have got a handful of slides just to set the scene. A little bit about us at Cadcorp. We are UK based and focus on the development and delivery of our product Cadcorp Sys, which includes web, mobile and desktop GIS applications. We work across various sectors, with government being the focus of today's webinar. We work across central local government down to town and parish councils. And now to introduce you to some of our core products. This is Cadcorp Sys Desktop, our advanced user or administrator client with a full range of analysis and data manipulation tools. Important to mention that these products support over 300 different GIS and data formats out of the box without need for translation. Ian will pick up on some of that a little bit later on today. So in addition to that, we have a product called Cadcorp Sys WebMap. This opens up geographic information to your wider organisation and all the general public. This application also has a mobile interface and has been designed such that no training is required. And finally, our notice board product. This is a dashboard approach where geographic information is displayed, but the user doesn't necessarily need a map to be displayed, just the information that's pertinent to that person. Okay, so I'll kick off today with my PowerPoint, GIS professionals in government. You are all GIS professionals in government and you're informing, providing answers and aiding in decision making. So what do? You guys know what you do. I thought I'd take a look at a recent job description to find out a little bit more. So what does a GIS officer do? Has GIS and data expert with working knowledge of GIS databases, data management processes and systems. Working knowledge of all of these things, perhaps. So there's quite a lot of listed things there, from software, databases, data. Also to be a trainer, to troubleshoot or support your colleagues and lead or be a project manager. Also, be proactive, creative, enthusiastic, and an excellent communicator. So that actually covers a lot in terms of what you do as a local government GIS officer. Bringing this together today, what I thought I'd do was bring you some examples of what our customers have been doing in different councils across the UK. To give you an idea of a week in the life of other GIS professionals. So we've got 3 examples: Basildon, Aberdeenshire and Wealdon District Council. So just starting with Basildon. Basildon runs a weed control programme across many small parcels of land that are distributed far and wide. The challenge for them is they needed to put this weed control programme out to tender. The requirement was to identify land requiring weed control for that future contractor. So there were a number of steps involved in terms of the GIS to work out whether it was council-owned land or not. So land ownership in several flat files was needed to be merged and sliced to provide a definitive layer of land ownership across the council. The second step was to compare that land ownership by land surface type using the OS master map topographic classifications. And finally, some Excel calculations of PDF outputs for each site across the council area was required. Now, this type of analysis and output you can create from SIS desktop product that I showed you a screenshot of earlier. But actually, Basildon found themselves with limited GIS skills in-house when a member of staff moved on, so approached Cadcorp in this instance to do this work. So worth noting, if you don't have the skills in-house for whatever reason, please approach us, because we do have the data analysis skills available as a service within your organisation if you don't have them. So this was the resulting output, or I should say, this is one example of over 3,000 PDFs that were created, which, as you can see, include a map with master map and the areas highlighted in red, unique plot reference, the tabular breakdown of all of the classifications and areas, and an inset map. This was created in SIS Desktop using a free add-in called the Book Plotter, which automates image creation and printed output like this. And that's available from the downloads page of the Cadcorp website if you've not tried that application yet. So the data that was created was provided back to Basildon, and this has been used since for a street cleansing program, and in future it'll be used for a general maintenance program. So it's great news that that analysis and work can all be reused in future. So some of our colleagues at Aberdeenshire Council have been working on strategic planning of future services, where different options could be analysed. So this screenshot here is an example of school estate planning and role forecasting using primary school pupil home postcodes with school catchment areas. Again, this was created in SIS Desktop, the spider analysis, and again with a free tool called the Routing Tools add-in, which is available for download from the Cadcorp website. And my colleague Ian in Top Tips later on will take a look at some of the new functions available in those routing tools. So as well as that example, here's another project where WebMap, Cadcorp WebMap was used to display managing and maintaining infrastructure assets. So you'll see Ordnance Survey Master Map, water network data is used in the background, and this is used for recording of inspections and flooding incidents. The information is made accessible to all staff via WebMap on the council's intranet, and authorised staff have edit capabilities so that they can add inspection information. So, final example I'm going to take a look at in these slides today is industrial estate locations for the public via WebMap again, this time using the embedded map option. This is the map you can see in the background is actually using OS Zoom Stack. So the Zoom Stack is coming from a Cadcorp hosted data service via WMTS, but as you can see, it looks nice and slick in that web implementation. Now, last week, Matt from City of Stoke presented on his particular web mapping use cases. So his presentation will be available online soon as well. So it will be, that was really great presentation. So please do go and view that online when it's available. So at this point, I'm going to pass to my colleague Ian Usher, and he will be delivering us some live demos today. So over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Demalza. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show my screen, and then you guys should be able to see that. And then I'm just going to say that I want to play this PowerPoint from the current slide. So that's perfect. Okay, so hopefully everybody can hear me all right. But if you can't, just let us know and we can have a look at what we're doing. But so far it's looking good. You'll be pleased to know that I've only got 2 bits for this. So this is the first section that we're going to do, and this is talking about how we can make GIS less task heavy. So, so following on from Demalza's presentation, there are a lot of different things that you guys will do as GIS professionals, and there are 3 tools that we are going to look at that can help us streamline the processes that we are looking at. So the first one is a new application that's called Cadcorp Sys ETL, and this is a data management tool that manages and controls the flow of data between files, databases, and servers. And it streamlines spatial data management. So the ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. And what you can do is you can specify different file formats that you want to do things with. And then depending on what you want to do with it, it will transfer it into a database. It can copy it to a different folder location, and it can do multiple different things. And we'll look at this briefly in a second. Another thing that we've been working on is the functionality that we can get a web map within the Power BI. So for those people, the Power BI application is a business analytics solution that lets you visualize your data and share insights across an organization. And what we have recently done is we've allowed users to include an embedded web map that makes it even easier for you guys to put your data straight into the Power BI application, and the visuals that you can produce will be dynamic with the mapping application as well. And then for the last thing we're going to look at is there's an option for Cadcorp Sys Web Map, which is the editing functionality. So this allows you to edit points, lines, and polygons through a web browser, which sounds really simple. But what we've also done is we've had some really intuitive ways of using labels to identify things within an area that you have drawn on the actual map itself. So we'll have a look at how we can do this and what we can get to come back through to the label that we've got in front of us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to demo all of this kind of data, all of these 3 different things that we're going to look at. So the first one was our Cadcorp Sys ETL tool. So what this allows us to do is we can extract, transform, and load data from different file formats into a database server, or we can just simply copy files across different locations. And the way that it works is that the ETL tool has a really simple user interface, and that allows different things to happen. So the first thing is that the connection, through the ETL tool allows us to specify a database. So this database will hold the configuration settings that will say that you want to take a shape file and transform it as a tab file, or a BDS file that you want to load into a PostGIS database, for example. So that's where you set up the kind of the configuration side of things. In the projects, what you can do is you can select multiple different projects. So across an organization, you might have different departments that might want different ways of handling data. So this allows you to set up different projects for different departments, allowing them to see how that data works. And then what we can do is under files, we can specify what we want to do with this data. So what you'll see in this example is we've got an SWD that we are using to load lots and lots of data in and then write that into a spatial database. And then we're taking a shape file and a tab file and just simply copying and uploading that data to a specific folder as well. Okay, so the way that it works is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my desktop, and I've got a file location, which is my SWD_export file that we've got set up. And what you'll see under my exports folder, it's not my exports folder, it's under my FTP folder. What you'll see is that we've got all of this SWD export in here. So what it will do is it will, whatever is found in this folder, because of the way we've configured it, it will automatically export anything in this SWD to a PostGIS to a PostGIS server, which is great. And then what I'm also going to do is all that data that we looked at a second ago, so the shape file and the tab file for the England boundaries and the map national data set, I'm going to put into this folder as well. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say that we want to add lots and lots of data to this SWD file, which is our project file. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a MIF-MID file, which is a map info file. I'm going to take a DWG, which is an AutoCAD file. We can take a shape file, which is an Esri file. A geo package, which is a newly created flat file format that we can use. And a BDS file, which is a native Cadcorp file format. And we can simply drag and drop that straight into our desktop software, and we can see all of that data being loaded in appropriately. And if I drop the list down on the side, what you'll see is we've got all this data kind of split up. So we can see the open green space, we can see the schools, we can see our wards, we've got the DWG in there, and we've got the flooding as well. And what I'm going to do before I save it is I'm just going to ungroup my green space layer. So what I can do is I can save that SWD, and I know that all of this data is going to be written into a PostGIS database, because that's what I've asked for. What I can also do is, now that we've all set this all up, what we can do is, you guys won't have to do this because you'll have this set up on a server. So this is me demoing it in 20 minutes rather than you guys having a 24-hour process that takes data and writes it into a database. So I'm doing this just because I want to demo this in like 20 minutes worth. So what we can do is, under our services, we've got a SIS ETL tool that allows for the configuration to happen, and it knows to take the SWD and do whatever we've asked for it to do with it, and the same with the shape files and tab files that we've got set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to restart that service. So it takes a couple of minutes, but what we'll see is when we come back to it, those files that we've copied in have moved, and then when we go to the PostGIS database, we'll see everything in that particular database being loaded in a second ago. And what we're going to do is we're going to come back to this in a second so we can see how all that works. So that's kind of the first thing. So that's an easy way of managing kind of your data and streamlining the processes that you make in regards copying data for particular departments and moving it around into spatial databases and things like that. The second thing that we're going to look at is our Power BI integration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up the Power BI desktop application, and what we'll do is we'll set up a really basic project before looking at more advanced ones. So the Power BI application, the first thing that you can do is you can say that you might want to get data, which is what we're going to do. And what it does, it supports numerous different data files, We are going to connect via CSV, but it's also worth knowing that it supports SQL database and PostGIS database as well, which is the majority of our customers store the data in these kind of databases. But what we're going to do is we're just going to take a really simple flat file, such as a CSV file, and load that data in. So I've got that selected, and I'm going to say that I want to connect to that data set. So under my local government conference folder, I've got a Camden Trees data set, and I'm going to say that I want to open it. It tells us that it's opening that file, and what we can do is we can see kind of all the attributes that are coming across from that data in front of us. And what the important thing to note is that it's got an easting and northing that exists right at the very end. And this is important because whatever coordinate reference system we hold within the CSV file needs to be exactly the same that's been served out from the WebMap. So it's really important that this matches all. It doesn't have to be OSGB, it can be the WGS84 format, but whatever coordinate reference system needs to match the map that exists in the WebMap application. So I'm going to say I want to load that data. What we can then see, if I just move my WebEx thing, what we can then see is that once it's loaded in, you'll see we've got all the columns on the right hand side for our Camden Trees data set, which is great, and it's brought all that information in for us. What I can then do is I'm going to say that I want to import a visual from a file, and what we've got in front of us is the Cadcorp Sys web map for Power BI, and I'm going to click open. And what it'll do is it'll tell us that it's imported that visual, which is great, and it's also added the Cadcorp Sys web map visual to the toolbar, so we can see that in front of us. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click it, and what we now have to do is we now have to configure how this is set up. So I'm just going to click and drag to make that a little bit bigger. And under our fields, what we can do is we can specify an X and a Y. So I'm going to say I've got my easting, and I've got my northern, and then under the format of the tool, under the map settings, there's a service URL that needs to be entered. So this URL will simply point at the embedded map that allows for the integration of the data and the functionality of the data to be taken over as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in our locally held website. So it's webmap underscore embedded maps, and the map name is embedded as well. And what we'll see is that it's going to go away and it's going to load up the embedded map in front of us. I think I've got too many D's in there. So once it's gone away and loaded it up, what we should see in front of us, so it's localhost webmap embedded maps, and we're using the embedded one. What will happen is that eventually, at some point, we'll get a map. I think I've spelled something wrong. Right, that looks better. Okay, spelled it wrong. Okay, so it's now put that in. So now we've got a map in front of us, which is showing where our starting point is. So we set the starting point up as our Stirling Court. So that's simply got a map into there straight away, and we can see kind of our master map data. And if we were to zoom out, I think what we'd have is our zoom stack data in front of us as well. So it looks really nice within the Power BI application. To show how it dynamically links with tables and things, what I can then do is I'm going to say that I want to add a table, and that table is going to consist of our site name. So it puts that data in and it loads all of these different points in that we can now start interacting with. So the first one on the top of the list is our Abbey Estate 1. So when I click on that data set, what you'll see is it filters all of the other columns out in that table, but there are 3 red points on the map that show where that data is currently residing. So this is where the link between the map and the table that we've got set up in this example is dynamically linking. So if we now go to Alexander and Ainsworth Estate, what you'll see is we've got a lot more trees. As I zoom out, we can see where all those trees are. We've got different options that exist within the visual for the Power BI. So you could add, and we'll see this in the second later, we could have hovering attributes. So where we hover over a pin, we might get an attribute back that tells us what that reference is, and then you can shoot off to a website and grab that reference. And then what we can also do within our map settings is we've got additional functionality. So the similar functionality that you get with the embedded map is the option of changing the marker color. So for example, I might change them to gold, or we could change them to purple. And then, like I say, with the embedded map, you get lots of functionality, but what you might want to do is say you might want to pan zoom. We've got a layer switcher if we had data for the map, so we can see how these points interact with the data underneath. Or we might have our mouse position, so if we hover over, we could see what the east and northings are as well. Okay, so that's a really brief example of how you can set that that Power BI link up. But then if we go to our website, we've got other examples straight away that are using it in a bit more of an advanced process. So what you'll see here is just picking a couple of what we've got. Is we've got a local authority that is showing kind of all the planning applications. There's a nice map in the bottom right that's got red pins that shows us where those planning applications are. And what a user can do is they can say, well, I'm interested in only those that are showing that are changes to Windows. So we click on it, and what you'll see is all the points have disappeared, and it's only showing those that kind of relate to our changes to rear Windows. We can do the same with our planning officer. So maybe I'm interested in only those that are using Dougie Fletcher, for example. So we can click and it limits that data again. And then what we can also do is we can be really specific and say, I'm interested in this one. And what it'll happen is it will go away and it will find that particular plan application. So now we can see that this probably wasn't refused. The average decision time took a week. Its application type is new dwelling, which was what we clicked on. And then the planning officer was Rachel Willis, for example. But more importantly, what we can do is we can zoom into this particular site and we can see the point on the map, and we can also see the boundary that's gone with it. And because we've got a master map in there, it makes it really detailed in terms of using the ordnance survey data that you already hold and the point data, which is in your OSGB format, which is already what you've probably got your data being captured in. So that's all available for us via the local authority option. What we can then do is we've got other examples, so things like police, for example. So we've started this up a little bit nicer. And what you can see is that we've got a hotspot map underneath, and we've got all of our red pins. And what's really good is you can see the spatial visualization of the data as you click on things. So if I said I'm interested in only the roads that are M1, for example, you'll see that all these points relate to the M1, which is really good. But then because you've got the data underneath that's coming from WebMap, you can see that actually the accidents on the M1 aren't as dense as the accidents that have been around the Leeds area. So if we were to click on, say, for another example, you can see that we've got the A62, and we can compare this to the roads in the particular Bradford and Leeds area that we've got as well. So it's providing the kind of spatial analytics that you need in order to see kind of spatial relationships between that and the table data changing as well. And then the very last example we've got is for our housing side. So what you've got here is a load of bar charts and pie charts. You've got a count of the addresses, and what a user can do is they can just come in and say, right, I know all of these things are working at the minute across the whole data set, but maybe I'm interested in our postcode sector CV6, and we're looking at houses. So the data will go away and show where those particular sites are, which is great. But what we can then do is we can zoom in. So now you'll see we've zoomed in. We've got the option of turning the data on. So on here, we've got 3 different data sets. So we've got tree canopies, grounds maintenance, and our commercial corporate ownership. So we can turn all those on and off individually if we want to, or I can turn that as a full data set. So we can see that data turning on and off. So we can compare the kind of spatial data that you're capturing to all of the points that are held in the Power BI application. And then, as we said right at the start, this one's got a working link on it, is that if we hover over our points, you'll see that we get an attribute that's available to us. And on that attribute, what we can do is we can click it, and Power BI will say, are you sure you want to do this? We can click OK, and then that takes you away to an appropriate website. So it's really good at allowing you to keep kind of all the links between your data that you might be serving into your web map, and making sure that people go to the right place once they've clicked on a link that allows them to see kind of the data side of things. So that's kind of everything for the Power BI application that we've got available, or what we've been working on. Like I say, that kind of streamlines the whole data process in terms of you don't have to translate your data to a WGS84 format, you can still hold the data in the OSGB format, and you can also serve in the spatial data that you've got available to users as well, so they can see the comparison between the data set and the data within the Power BI application. And then what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at our editing side of things for WebMap. So WebMap is our web mapping application, and it allows us to visualize and query spatial information over the web. Not having much luck this morning. And once we are logged in, what we can do is there's a function which is an add-on that can allow users to edit information over the web. So what I can do is, the first thing that we can say is that we want to search for an address because we're interested in creating data at a particular location. So this address goes away and looks through different databases to present the data. We click on the appropriate address and it takes us away to the appropriate site, which is great. What I can then do is, if we click on what would you like to do, there's an editing module. So this makes it really easy for users to be able to edit data through the website. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say that we've got a new tree that we want to add. So we can create point slides and polygons, and I'm just going to go briefly through each one. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a point, but it's down as a tree. So I'm going to say that there is a tree in the back of this building. And what pops up, as soon as we put the point down, what pops up is the option of adding different attributes in. So we can give it a site name, a common name, height in meters. You'll see we've got an inspection date, and that's a calendar that pops up. You can also have drop downs to make it easier to enter consistent data. So you might have the maturity of it. I'm going to say this is middle age, and the psychological condition can be excellent for this tree. But then the spreading meters, I'm going to say that we are entering this tree as 5 meters. And what happens is, as soon as I click save, that point gets written into a database, and then the project file that's serving this data in has a process theme on it that says whatever the diameter is, we need to show that. So this is showing a 5 meter buffer, effectively, of the point that we put on the map. What we could do is, I would say I've got that wrong. So maybe it's not 5 meters. If I select that point and go into my edit attributes, I'm going to say that maybe this is 20 meters. So when I click save, what you'll now see is that tree gets bigger. So it allows us to not only write the data to the database, which is great on its own, but then it also allows us to theme the data, add labels, do things dynamically based on data attributes that can be held on the data themselves. What we can do as well is we can add in new planning applications. So I might say that these planning applications are polygon based. So this is what we're going to draw. And what we can also do is we can enable snapping. So I've got a planning application that's going to go next door to a site that we've already drawn. And what you'll see is that it snaps to the master map as we are moving around the site. And then what happens is we can double click to finish. And again, like we had before, we can enter data. So I might say that we've got our application reference of 001 full for this one. We can enter address. You can add a year. You can add an application type. Again, we've got a drop down for a planning officer. You might have a receive date, and a decision date can be 2 weeks in advance, and the status could be approved. And then what's happening on the bottom side of things is that it's using the expression to show kind of that it'll pick up on the district, it'll pick up on the ward, and then images or PDFs or street view links that we've got available as well. But as soon as I click save, again, what happens is it writes that into the database, and it allows the user to see that that's been created, which is great. So that makes it really easy for users to be able to edit information straight over the web, which is fantastic. So trees and plan applications are a good example of this. The more intuitive way of using it is that we found that users were using it for kind of intelligence side of things. So what they'll do is they'll say we select a data set, which is our key intel. We're going to say that we want to create a polygon. And then what we can do is draw the area that we're interested in. So if I just really briefly draw around this whole estate, what we can then do is we can double click to finish. We can enter an area name. So I'm just going to call this Ian's area, and I'm going to click save. And what it does is it's using all these different expressions to say that this is the area that you've drawn. and then it returns the information that you might have already set up for users to be able to see. So this is picked up, this polygon's been drawn, it's picked up using find containers and calc interiors, all of these different statistics. So it's saying that this polygon is within the Camden London Borough district. It's within the Camden Town with Primrose Hill Ward. It's had 52 crimes, and there's 8 plan applications with 150 trees that exist within that area. So it's instantly giving users that have drawn an area information about the polygon that they've drawn themselves. So it's a really good way of enabling users to kind of self-serve their analytical side of things, because rather than, I wouldn't want to sit here and count 150 trees if I'm being honest. So at least it makes it easier to count the number of trees that you've got available, or plan applications and crimes and things like that. Okay, so that's kind of the editing side of the WebMap application that we've got available. And then just to finish this bit off, what we said was we were going to look at our ETL tool. So that ETL tool will have now done everything that we've asked for it. And what I'm going to say is that we're going to open a new SWD for our national data. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to a PostGIS database that we had writing all this data into. So I'm going to say I want to add an overlay from a database using PostGIS, but you'll see we've got SQL and Oracle options in there as well. I've got this hosted database service, which is what it's been writing all that data into. And then I'm just going to add data in really simply. And what you'll see is I cleared this out this morning. So there's 6 different database tables that we can put in, and we can select all this data. We can say finish, and it's going to bring all that data back into the application for us to see. So it's written that SWD data, it's written all the data that was contained in the SWD to a PostGIS database. And then if we have a look at our folder as well, we went into FTP. So all these files that we copied earlier have now been moved into the appropriate location, which I've classed as our FT export. So it allows us to see where that information has been exported to as well, which is really good. So again, that's just another way of making data more streamlined, in the fact that you can manage it, you can set up a service, and it'll run on its own every 24 hours, 12 hours, 1 hour if you wanted it to. It's over to you guys for that. So that kind of that's the end of the Making GIS less task heavy. We're going to answer questions towards the end. So what I'll do is I'll now move on to kind of the tips and tricks, and then we'll look at the questions at the end of the webinar. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. I'm going to come down to this bit, and I'm going to say from our current slide. So again, just a really brief PowerPoint from me. So we've got we're going to look at tips and tricks that we'd normally hold at the local government conferences. And the things that we're going to do really briefly is we've got options of importing and exporting data from the desktop and the Zoom stack support. There's a number of different functions regarding our routing tools that make things a lot easier when you're doing analysis. And then regarding the web map, we've got different options or functions that we can do with an embedded map. So an individual layer switcher, which we've seen really briefly in the Power BI demonstration, but also enabling the quick search within the embedded map as well. So that's the brief side of things. So if I can just minimize that for a second, what I can then do is I'm just going to go and say that we want to open our map again, our national data set. I'm just going to remove that. And what we can do is, the first thing that we can do is, Demalza said in her presentation right at the start, is that Cadcorp Sys Desktop and the web map is really good at supporting lots and lots of different data formats. And we make it really, really easy for users to be able to drag and drop all of that data into a map so they can see it straight away. So if I open our folder and go to our drag and drop folder, what you'll see is, again, I've got lots and lots of different data formats and data files in different formats. So I can take a MIF file, which is our map info. I can take a tab file, which is map info as well. GeoPackage again, because it's a new file format that's coming out. We've got a shape file from Esri and a BDS file from Cadcorp, and we can just simply, 5 different files, all in different formats, we can just simply drag and drop those straight onto the map. And what you'll see is that all that data loads up, and we can see all of that information on the map available to us. So we've got available the OS open green space, and we can see the sites and we can see the access points. So I'm just going to make that as invisible. We can see the flooding that we've got in front of us. We can see the districts, which are the kind of the light grey lines on top of the raster that we've got available from the OS. And then if I were to zoom in slightly, what you will then be able to see is, there you go, is we've got our bus stops on there, and then we've also got a number of different plan applications. So I can turn my stations off, and then what you'll see is we've got plan applications in here as well. So if I just say I want to zoom into this area, you'll see in a second that we've got our plan applications on the map too. So we can see how all that data kind of comes in and we can manage it. What we're also good at is we can also export out to a number of different formats as well. So one of those that we might want to export out to, say for example, we want to export this area, is a DXF file, for example. So in our applications, we can say that we want to use our export master map to DXF tool, which is free to customers, and you can download it from the Cadcorp community. And what we can do is we can say that we want to export our master map using the Cadcorp template, or if users have got their own, they can do that. We can export it as a single file, so we want one single DXF file, or again, what you've got options of saying that maybe you want to export it out as OSG tile, OS tiles, or you want to choose the tile format that you want to export out to, but I'm going to leave it as our standard. And then you can also include the layers that you might want. So if you've got a number of different plan applications around St. Paul's Cathedral, for example, you could include those plan applications as part of the export. But what I'm going to say, I'm just going to export the master map data. And then finally, because it's DXF, you get different file formats that you can export out to. So AutoCAD 2018 is the latest one. That's the one we're going to use. And then what we can also do is say that we might want to remove the spatial reference, so it puts it in 0.0. And we also might want to take a lot of precision over and scale it to millimeters. I'm going to leave them blank, and I'm just going to click finish. So it tells us it's doing it. It does it really quickly. And then what we can do is, if I turn my master map off, I'm going to then go to our downloads folder, which is where I asked it to save it. You'll see that we've got a master map DXF file that was created at 11:42, which is a minute ago, which is perfect. And then what I can do is drag and drop that data into the map. And straight away, you'll be able to see that we've got the DXF in there. We can read it, we can zoom in and zoom out, and we've got all the styles that come across with it, and the text as well, which is great for that particular area that we've got. There's also a number of different other file formats. So just to briefly show you that if we went into our export file, you'll see we've got the common spatial data files, so shape files, tab files, map info files. We've got BDS file, which is a native Cadcorp file, but there's about 50, 60 different export options that we can do from a flat file format. And we can also write into different databases. So Microsoft SQL, Oracle, and Postgres databases are included on that list as well. What we can now do is we can also say that we want to add our ZoomStack data to the map. Now, ZoomStack comes as a geo package, and we can drag and drop that in. And because we work really closely with it on survey, we understand how that geo package should be read. So we automatically apply styles to it. So the data comes in loaded, it looks nice, you can use it straight away. The scale thresholds exist, so it's really quick for the user to be able to navigate through all that different data. What we've just recently added is the option of saying that we want to bring it in with color vision deficiency styles. So if I go into our add overlay, we can go into our ordnance survey overlay type, and you can see that we want to choose ZoomStack. So I'm going to click next. My ZoomStack is held in a Postgres database. And what I can do is I'm going to say that we want to add it from a particular table that we've got set up. So it comes in with all the features enabled. So we've got, I think, 20 or 30 different features that are enabled in that on that particular data set. The only one that I'm going to turn off is our contours, because there's a lot of contours across the UK. And I'm just going to say I don't want this because it kind of impedes on the map that we want available to us. But what you'll see under the theme, we've got our standard ones, but then there are two color deficiency styles that we've got set up. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the one that I've got highlighted, So I'm going to go for the Tritonopia one that we can add in. And once we've selected it, we can click finish, and the data will load up according to the styles that Ordnance Survey provide, and we can see how the colours have changed in front of us. So I think this is a lighter blue and darker green kind of setup. And as we zoom in, the zoom stack data, because it provides a continuous map base, provides all of the kind of information, and we can see things turning on, tube stations turning on as we zoom in, and we can see them as we zoom out disappearing as well. So it's a really good way of getting the data in. It's just to show that we've got different styles that we can set up for your users within the WebMap application. What we're going to look at now is kind of our routing tools. So there's a couple of different things that have been added to the routing tools that we can show. So if I load up a project file that we've got set up, I'm just going to get rid of the one that we've been using. And the first thing we're going to do, because we're using routing tools, we need to add a topological data set. So our Ordnance Survey highways data can easily be added to the map. So I'm going to go into our local governments folder, and I'm going to say that I want to drag and drop the BDS file that we've got set up. So I'm going to simply take the OS highways and I'm going to drag and drop it straight into the map. So while I'm dragging and dropping, it takes a second for it to do it for Brighton, but it's worth noting that we've got tools that allow you to export the raw native GZ file format for the highways data into an appropriate file. So this BDS file is an appropriate file that's been created, or you can store it in another file format if you want to, but this works really well in the BDS file that we've got set up. And so what the routing tools will do, they can be downloaded from the Cadcorp community, and they can be added to the interface. But in its basic format, what you've got the option of straight away out of the box is saying that we want to measure a route. I'm going to use our highway speeds option, but I'm also going to say that I want to create a line string so we can see what route's been taken. When I click OK, I can go from one side of Brighton to the other. And what the system does is it will come back and say, based on the routing that you've enabled, it's going to take 5 minutes and 38 seconds to get from point A to point B. And that's using road routing information as well. So it's all topological. So it knows where one-way streets are, it knows where right turn only, left turn onlys are, and it gives us the most appropriate route based on the routing that we've got available. So that's really good. Straight out of the box, you can use your routing and you can create routes out of it. And if we turn our highways off, you'll see what route exactly has been taken. What we can then do is we can do more advanced routing as well. So I'm going to say that we've got a list of, well, we've got a couple of schools on the map. I'm going to select our point, and under the applications, I'm going to say that we want to create an ice cream. So we want to see how far we can travel within 2, 4, and 6 minutes of our school point that we've selected. And the new option is to, well, I won't go into the new option yet. So what we can do out of the box is we can say that we want to do all this, we want to do these ice creams. We'll make it really easy because it's using a wizard interface. And then we're going to have all this results all in one overlay. What you can also do is you can change the measurement option. So we're using the highway speeds data. So it's assuming that we can do 70 miles an hour down a motorway, 60 down an A road, 30 in an urban area, or 20 in an urban area. What you could also do is you can link in with the average road speed data from Ordnance Survey, so you get a lot more accurate travel times taken into account when you're doing your highways data, when you're using your highways data. We're just going to leave it as our highway speeds, but you could add your own expressions in there as well. When I click OK, you'll see it creates the ice cream for that particular school, and we can really easily identify where the 2 minutes is via the green colour, 4 minutes via the yellow, and then 6 minutes via the red. So it's really good at giving you that analysis straight away and showing you how far you can travel to from that school. So what the new option is, I kind of give it away briefly, is that we can now say that we want to create an ice cream, but we want to say that we want to different options that say that we want to see how this collated ice cream looks. So we've got, maybe we want to do them each on a separate overlay. Maybe we want to create an overlay per point or an overlay per travel item. And if I select all of my points, what you'll see is I'm going to say I want one per travel limit. So this is going to give us a polygon for 2 minutes, polygon for 4 minutes, polygon for overlay for 2 minutes, overlay for 4 minutes, overlay for 6 minutes. So when I click OK, it goes away. We can see those ice creams being created. And then the colours will stand out more. So we've got the 6 minutes and we can turn that off. So we've got all the reds. The yellow minutes are the 4 minutes and we can turn all those off. And then finally, we've got the 2 minute buffer that we've drawn, and we can see how far we can get from those particular schools in that 2 minute period. And then that leads us nicely on, because what we could say is that we want to select all of these different drive time areas. We've got our pupils data set underneath, and using the pupils data set, we can say, now that we've got those areas selected, we can say we want to go into Query Builder. We can do an attribute search, so you could look for a particular postcode or a particular pupil name if you want to, if that existed. In this example, it doesn't. We're just saying we want to create a spatial query of all those items that fall within those boundaries that we've got selected. And then we can either say what we're going to do is we're going to filter that overlay so we can only see those on the map, but you might want to create a filtered copy or copy the matching items, or simply select them if you want to see where they are. I'm going to say the filter, we're going to click finish, and what you'll see is filtered all those pupils out that live within that particular drive time. And then what we can also do with that then is, if we go into table, we can say that we want to see all of our pupils. It's only got those that are listed in that list by postcode. That's the only attribute we've got. But then when you go to export, you can see you've got the option of exporting to either CSV file, HTML file, or a text file as well. So that's a really good use of the routing tools, of new options in the routing tools that we've got available. And then the very last thing from us is that we've got different functions that exist within the embedded map. So if I just go to our embedded map example, I'm just going to log in. What we can do is we've always been able to include an embedded map on a website. With the installation of the Cadcorp WebMap, there is an embedded map that comes with it. So it allows you to, like we can see in front of us, take a really basic map like we've got here, and we can add that to an HTML page, and then we can have data being served in. So we're using kind of the same data that we were looking at earlier, the trees, the plan applications, and the schools. And then what we can do is, as we zoom in, it goes through all the different kind of functions that you've got. So you can get into your master map, you can see the trees and plan applications and things like that, which makes it really easy for the user to be able to see information. It also enables you as a user, as an admin user, to serve that data out to members of the public so they can see the information that's available to them. One of the new things that we've added is that now, by default, we can say that we might want to turn data on and off. So if I hover our map, you can see here we've got tree data, we've got schools, and we've got plan applications. I might say that I might want to turn my trees off, for example. So now we're left with the plan applications and the schools. I can turn the schools off, and then we're just left with our plan applications, and we can turn that off if we choose to as well. Or we can turn them all on, and using the WebMap 9 option, because that it kind of treats them as a group, we can turn the whole lot off. So that just gives you some further options regarding the embedded map, or one further option regarding the embedded map, where you can get the features as individual overlays into the embedded map as well. And then the very last one is that we can say that we want to include a quick search. So in this example, we've got a web page set up again. So we've got a nice big slippy map. But what we can then do is we can say that we want to now include a quick search. So if we type in Stevenage, system's going to go away and say, right, is this a town? Is this a road name, postcode, whatever searches you've got set up with this individual map. And then when you click it, it will take you to the appropriate place. So that's another function that just makes it really easy for the end user to be able to not only see a map, but now they might want to search for their address before they show the crimes in their area or the green space that exists. So that's the end of the tips and tricks section. So what we've done is we've looked at how we support lots and lots of different data formats, and we can easily add them into the map. We've shown additional support for the zoom stack, which includes the color deficiency styles that we've got set up. And we've looked at a couple of the different options for the routing tools. And then within WebMap, we've looked at the embedded map, which allows for the individual layer switcher, and then the option for the quick search to be able to move around the map as well. So what I'll do now is I'll carry on with the PowerPoint, and I will pass you back over to Demelza, who will finish off.
Thanks, Ian. Some great top tips there for us to take away from today. Now, I'm aware we're running short of time today, so I'll be quick in rounding up. So some key takeaways from today. Hopefully we've shown you a bit of a week in the life of a GIS professional and what that involves, the tasks and things you and your colleagues get involved in. Some user and Cadcorp experiences. Obviously, we've had to condense some of today, and also we have missed some presentations from our original conference agenda. So I really would recommend you go and take a look at those when we post those online, especially the presentation from City of Stoke. There's a presentation on evaluating cloud responsibility, and also what we've been working on in the last year or so at Cadcorp. Quite interesting presentations there. So just moving on to your questions. We won't get chance, I'm afraid, to answer all of your questions today, but I promise myself or Ian will get back to you shortly for all of those of you that have answered questions. I will pick one from the list. How can I test the Power BI integration? So a trial of the Power BI visual is available. You can contact your account manager or myself to organise that trial if you'd like to have a go yourself. My details are on the next slide. And indeed, if you have any other questions you think of after the webinar, I'd like to discuss anything in more detail, my contact details are on screen currently. Finally, thank you for attending today, and we look forward to your presence at future Cadcorp events. And please could you complete the short survey, which will now pop up such that we can continue to deliver quality webinars to you in future. Thank you and goodbye.